Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another installation of Native Plants at Noon. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Chris Cardwell, Program Manager for Deep Roots KC, and I'm excited to be here with you once again for the July installment of our 2023 Native Plants at Noon with native landscape darlings, Alix Daniel and Cydney Ross. This month, we're returning to the Anita Gorman Discovery Center, where the native plant party continues this summer in what can only be described as an exciting season of weather. And we've been fielding an awful lot of questions and inquiries about your excitement in the garden this summer. So the theme of today's Native Plants at Noon is essentially an Ask Me Anything episode with our experts, Cyd and Alix. Now, before I talk about today and turn it over to Cydney and Alix, I want to make a few announcements. First of all, we are incredibly grateful to the Missouri Department of Conservation for their support of this broadcast and Deep Roots KC. And we are always grateful to you for your participation and support of our programs and our webinars. In the lead-up slideshow, you may have noticed some upcoming events, such as this Saturday, July 22nd, an in-person art and nature hike in Kill Creek Park. Please register online, and links will be included in the chat and in the resources that'll be delivered to you following the webinar. Also, continuing our Work and Learn Garden Work Days, the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month, you have the opportunity not only to join for a native landscape chat and just pick the brains of our native landscape experts, but to learn hands-on maintenance techniques and familiarize yourself building your intimacy with the native landscape at Anita Gorman Discovery Center. As always, this webinar will be recorded and up on the Deep Roots website very soon, and you'll all receive an email with the links and resources that we'll discuss. But again, today, it's you who are driving the bus more than anybody else. So please, throw your questions out there. This is an Ask Us Anything Native Plants at Noon. And I'm sure that with all the storms and all the excitement and all the heat, we've got a lot on our respective plates in the gardens. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Cydney and Alix to the Native Plants at Noon stage.
Hello, thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
You are the host with the most, aren't you? So, well, how do we begin? I'm Cydney.
I'm Alix.
And we're so excited to be here live at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Today, we've got a lot to talk about. And as Chris said, please put your burning gardening questions into the chat or the Q&A, and we will get to them as we go along.
And I wanted to just mention up top here, so this time of year, we've been really lucky here in Kansas City to have some really consistent rain, but that's not always the case. And today feels more like a true July day. And so what better plants to, we all know this, what better plants to have in your garden than these ones that are adapted to these sorts of extreme heat. So we're going to show you a few plants that are thriving, that do well in the extreme heat and also can handle kind of the nice rain that we've had.
Yeah, there's a few, so we practically live here at the Discovery Center. We immediately came by after the storms last Friday to check the damage and see what was going on. And I was really impressed to see some species, including the first ones we're going to be talking about, prairie blazing star, Liatris pycnostaceae, which side note, curious how y'all pronounce that Latin name for that plant. It's always fun to hear it out loud. How do you say it? Pycnostaceae. Anyway, that was one of a few that really held its own. So without further ado, we're going to hop over into the sun over here and take a look. And once we look at a few of our first native plant species, we will walk and answer some of the questions along the way. So thank you so much. Let's get going. All right. I'm under my umbrella, Ella, folks, because I do not want to have the heat take out the camera this time because it's hot out here. Okay, So for those who have been to the Discovery Center, you may or may not know, we have a very beautiful parking lot planting. This is one of our, what do we call this? I call it one of our square plantings in the concrete.
And these two were actually originally planted as drop seed monocultures, and we've let them kind of morph and become diverse on their own. And it's been fascinating to watch because they're both relatively planted with the same things, but for some reason this one has way more diversity than the one that's right next to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's mostly prairie drop seed. And we've got our prairie blazing star.
This is so beautiful.
Yeah.
This is like a firework of native plants.
It's the only firework I like. Really.
Right? Yeah, seriously. I'm not a fan of fireworks at all. So this is my jam here. So yeah, prairie blazing star. This is a fun plant. It starts blooming from the top and works its way down, much like a sparkler. Yep, see, it's going to be blooming down here. There are several species of liatris and blazing star, and they're all fabulous. Prairie blazing star just happens to be one of the first that blooms here in the Kansas City area.
That's right. And for, we were talking about floppers, the prairie blazing star, it does remarkably well at standing up after the first couple of years. It may be a bit floppy in the first year or so,
but seriously, these all stayed upright through that storm, which really surprised me because of, well, just, the vertical nature of this plant. Al, do you like that artistic description?
Yeah,
very directional. Yeah. So yeah, they've done really well. But I think part of that is, one, they're mature. So they're at least, how old do you think the blazing stars are?
I don't know if this is exactly right, but they're from corms, and so I try to kind of guess like how many flowers are coming off each of these corms. What's the grouping look like? And so some of those bigger ones, there's 4, 5 individual stems coming out of one big corm probably. So I'm gonna guess that a lot of these are probably, and we started
how old? Sorry.
These,
yeah,
probably about 5 years old.
Okay.
We started letting these transition, I'll say, when I started working here, which is
cool.
5 or 6.
Yeah. So it's not only are they well established, right? So 5 years, that's pretty good. But they also have a nice plant diversity around them. So the prairie drop seed, which I'm gonna get low here and show y'all. Try not to get the umbrella there, but it is the finer texture of the grass here. And in fact, actually, let me come over here. Okay. So I am a huge fan of using grasses and sedges in the landscape. Not only do I think it provides like a beautiful additional texture and a different kind of texture in the garden visually, but it also creates more habitat, a different type of habitat for wildlife. And yeah, just look how gorgeous it is. But Al, do you want to speak to the root morphology of these species and how that might help play a part in plants not flopping?
Right. So we've I think I learned this just a few years ago that, we always talk about how you should have your prairie plants really grouped together because they don't have space in nature. And so they help support each other. And I kind of just thought like, well, at the top, right, they're holding each other at the top. Well, actually the root morphology, which is the different shapes of the roots and how deep they go, how wide they go, how big they are, if it's a big tap root, if it's very like fine fibrous roots, they're all woven together and holding each other together underground actually. So the roots are just as important as the top growth when it comes to stability and not having floppers.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fascinating when you shared that with me. Thanks for telling our audience.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Did you all just see that bee that flew right into the bee bombed? That only kind of bombing I like.
And I just wanted you're seeing all the pollinators on these right now.
Yeah.
So many bumblebees, so many different little butterflies and flies and wasps. And but I just want to make a plug for Eastern Blazing Star real quick because
Liatris scariosa.
Yeah, scariosa, because that one will bloom much later than prairie blazing star. So it's nice to have both of them, to have 2 different bloom seasons, and the monarchs go nuts for the
They
Eastern
really
blazing
do.
star. Nuts. For it.
Actually, a tip here, this I learned from Merv Wallace of Missouri Wildflower Nursery. On their website, they suggested that if you are going to plant blazing star, plant 3 species. Specifically, I think they recommend Liatris pycnostaceae, aspera, and scariosa. Those all bloom one after the other. So you'll consistently have this type of color and pollinator attractor in your garden. That starts in mid-July and runs its course through, I want to say late August, September. Yeah.
Eastern blazing star is blooming when we have Monarch Mania, which is the last week of September, I think. So
Yeah.
And the other thing I was gonna mention about that is that it's not only a pollinator magnet, but then after it goes to seed, oh my God, the finches you will see.
Oh my God.
They like land on it and they're too heavy, and then it starts to fall over a little bit, but they will pick all those little seeds out, and oh, they love it. Now,
So
can I share? I know we're doing way too much on prairie blazing star. Can I share one more little thing? The Liatris, I guess, means crow food in Latin. I don't know, something like it. Scott Woodbury taught me this. And so actually at Shaw Nature Reserve, they don't even bother keeping their Liatris around as perennials, because the crows and the voles eat the corms. They love the corms, and so they have to plant them every year as an annual. Isn't that wild?
that is wild.
And we have a lot of ours eaten here too, but we have so much of it that it doesn't really make that much of an impact.
That also speaks to the value of letting these plants go to seed in the fall. If they are a really desirable plant that desirable for wildlife, I mean, in terms of it being eaten, then that's a really great way to make sure you have more that are going to spread later.
We're feeding the crows and the voles too.
Well, right.
Remember the rabbits, the crows. The
I mean, that's so true though. You know, I totally get the pains of having rabbits totally decimate your gardens. Like, been there, dealt with that. But that is something to consider. We're planting for everyone.
I think we got a question about that.
I think so. But real quick, I just want to say, so the value is, you know, if your things are getting eaten up, I know you're going to hate to hear this, y'all, or maybe you'll love it. Plant more. You got to plant more. You got to pack them in tight, so it's not just an open buffet where animals can easily see everything. Plant other things around it that might deter it, like mints, stuff like that. Anyway, that's kind of my
when you're planting a native garden in just a sea of grass and just terrible nothingness, then you're planting a buffet for rabbits, and of course they're going to come and chew on them. Now, we've used in other places, we've used a product called Scram, which seems to work pretty well. It's organic.
It's made of blood meal, bone meal.
Dogs.
They love to eat it. So before we talk briefly about Compass Plant, I just want to say that you know, if you subscribe to the Pollinator newsletter, you may have seen our post about Ask the Expert, and we received an email from Janet D, asking if there's value in staking her tall native plant friends. Because in this case, Janet has 4 to 5 foot tall milkweed. I'm assuming it's a common milkweed because that's typically one of the species that gets that tall. Could also be marsh milkweed. Janet said that they went ahead and staked it using a tomato stake. But Alix, you had a really great recommendation.
Yeah, so if you know what iris stakes look like, they are just like a straight wire with a little rounded top that's got a hole or an opening there, so you can stick that in near the plant and sort of thread the
stem around
into the hole, and so that holds it up really nicely. If you've got really heavy plants, like milkweed can be so heavy, you may need something a little bit taller. And we had actually genius, if you have any of those yard signs laying around from the politicians, that you can rip the paper part off and use the wires for taller stuff, which we've used for
I think that's a Kathy Hoggard hack, isn't
that's
it?
Kathy Hoggard right there. Yes, she's genius.
Love you, Kathy.
Love you, Kathy. There's some website where you can order those, but I forgot what it is. So you probably Google recycled political signs or whatever. Yard signs.
Okay. So real quick, let's point out this Compass plant here. I'm gonna get a closer look at the foliage because the leaves are fabulous.
So, Sid, do you want to talk about the Compass plant, or do you want me to be wrong about it?
I want you to be wrong about it.
So the name Compass plant comes from.
Well, real quick, what do you remember the Latin name?
Yes. Silphium, do you remember?
Nope, sure don't. L starts with the L.
Yeah, you got it.
Lacum.
City.
I don't know. Silphiums are ones I struggle with. I need to practice my scientific studies.
Yeah, they've got really long names. Silphium. Oh gosh.
Anyway,
Listen,
let's not hurt ourselves. Thank you, Chris Cardwell. Silphium lacinatum. Thank you.
But so they orient their leaves to go north and south. So if you see
Allegedly.
well, look at these. They're all doing it in this part.
Are they?
Yes.
I think they're more facing.
No, sorry. The leaves face the broadsides are east and west.
Okay.
And then the edges always go north and
Okay.
south.
Okay.
And there's a reason for it, which is that it is protecting the plant from getting too much sun during the day. So if the leaf was like this and the sun's coming from the south, that's hitting a full leaf and too much. That's too much. And so to save energy, they turn on their side.
Cool.
Isn't that so cool? So you can use that plant to orient yourself.
Allegedly. Yeah.
And then another great seed source, obviously sunflowers, a huge food source for birds in the fall.
Yes. Oh, and all the pollinators that are on this is very cool too. And also just have to point out the fabulous color combo that is purple and yellow. Look at that.
It's the July. Those are the colors of July, aren't they?
Right.
Purple and yellow.
Purple, yellow, and green. Equivalent to red, white, and blue, in my opinion. Okay, we are finally walking, y'all. You know us. You know we can talk forever. So as we walk, Chris, if you would like to let us know some of the questions we might have, and while you're getting a question amped up for us.
Yeah, we've got a handful for sure.
Perfect.
And I was going to interject them as you were discussing these plants, but you kind of touched on some already.
Great.
The answer to the question about do you deadhead the liatris? And I think the clear answer that you've alluded to is no, because it's incredible food for birds as well. Once the yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And you're like, it's such good food for birds that it really has a hard time reseeding itself. We don't find it that often. Well, and we do find prairie blazing star reseeding.
I found, yeah.
But mostly where they are multiplying from the form. So yeah, it's really, really important to have as many of those seeds stay in that area as you can.
Yeah, I would say in my experience at Primrose Prairie, it does reseed really well because remember the spring, it spread like crazy.
I guess it depends on the situation.
Totally.
If you give it space, it will reseed. But yeah, I would seedlings then don't survive, and so they'll kind of weed themselves out.
Yeah, that was a great question. We leave the seed head up for wildlife and so it can spread itself into the garden.
Yeah, we really don't take any seed heads down unless there are problem species that we don't want to spread.
Looking at you, Shining Blue Star. I love you, Shining Blue Star, but come on, you're just you're too robust for the small garden I'm thinking about right now.
So big.
Okay, so, Chris, what other questions do we have?
Well, there's a question about keeping rabbits and chipmunks from eating or burrowing in your garden. You mentioned a product called Scram. What kind of success have you had with like small scale fencing or any kind of obstruction?
Fencing is the ideal.
Fencing is the ideal. So what I find is rabbits and other wildlife, if you can put up some kind of fencing, at least while you're getting the garden established. Now, I get that's not feasible for a huge space, but anything to kind of deter. I'm personally starting to look into not sonar, but what is it?
Yes, there's
not echolocation, but gosh, like an auditory deterrent, just while the plants are getting established. Because again, remember, we are planting for wildlife, and that does include our pesky friends like rabbits and deer. But it is really a bummer when and can be really disheartening to lose like an entire garden, which also definitely been there.
Yeah, but the plants they're adapted to be eaten, but they have to be able to establish their roots first. So the first thing that happens is those rabbits, those birds, those squirrels, they just rip that little baby plant out. So if, yeah, like you said,
And eat it up. Yum,
if
yum.
they can establish their roots, the chewing should not be a problem in
Right.
the long run. And
Yeah.
more plants, more plants.
More plants too. My friend Sharon's house is a good example of this. We planted hundreds of plants. Most of them got eaten. I'd say 80% got eaten. And I look around that neighborhood, it's in Prairie Village, and there is no food for the rabbits anywhere in that whole area.
Winter creeper.
No winter
and
creeper.
turfgrass and
Yeah.
like
They can't eat any of that. So of course they're going there and eating it. So
They even ate the mint.
they even
They're not supposed to eat that.
I know they did. They even ate the mint.
There's no absolutely deer and rabbit proof plants, but we've talked about this a lot. There are lots of plants that will deter deer and rabbits.
Mints are one of them.
Mints, and then roughly textured plants like silphium.
Yeah, silphiums, totally. They'll still eat some sunflowers, but at the end of the day, if anyone's hungry enough, they will eat something. But and we also mentioned earlier tight plantings, lots of plants, so that they're not one plant sitting in an ocean of mulch, so that it's super obvious that the plants are there. Those are just some options. Of course, it's not perfect, but that's just how it goes. It's a challenge. It's part of it.
Two further questions about that last bed before, and then I'll let you lead on in there into what I believe is ironweed. Caroline, one of our dear friends here, is curious about the prairie drop seed. Y'all had a great event there, ladies' night out previously.
Yeah.
And that bed in particular stands out. It's right at the front door. It's sort of the gateway to the Discovery Center. That prairie drop seed, when I want to build a garden that looks like that, how far apart do I plant my prairie drop seed? And what are the grasses that you use to accompany it? Because that all looks just so compact and really managed and low.
Alex is so happy.
This is a terrible question. I have so much to say.
Alex is an interesting person to ask about how close to space plants.
Do note we only have 38 minutes of time left. Okay, so keep it brief.
Okay, we'll keep it brief.
Okay. So these are fully grown drop seeds. So this is how big they get. They start off much smaller than this.
Well, in fact, let's actually walk this way because we can look at an example of prairie drop seed that is has a separation between the plants. Sorry, Al, can you walk up here and talk at the same time? Man, y'all, we talk so much. We barely even we're not even making it to the prairie today. Almost 8. How much time we have, Chris? 8 minutes?
38, I said, before 1 o'clock.
What? 38. Well, I want to show them this real quick. And there's more ironweed.
Yeah, but not the Chelsea chop. Anyway, I just want to mention really quick, I Chelsea chopped. We cut the ironweed back in that spot, and you can see where the ones we didn't cut back and the ones we did cut back. They're blooming at about the same time at drastically different heights, and it's cool. It's very cool. Oh, this one's blooming.
Oh, it smells good.
So another interesting thing about prairie drop. Do you want to talk about the interesting?
No, you're
thing?
good. Go for it.
So the seeds have a really unique scent, and some people, maybe y'all will chime in. Yeah, if some people think that it smells like popcorn, buttered popcorn, and some people think it smells like cilantro. I'm team cilantro.
I'm team cilantro.
Yeah. Let us know
what team are you on?
If you have a smell. So,
but Caroline, I hope this gives you a sense of how large these plants are individually. And how old are these? Are these about 3 or 4 years old?
These are 3, I think.
So a little bit younger than the prairie squares. And I would say, so here's my recommendation, Carolyn. Hi, by the way, we love you too. I would refer to the native plant vendors sizing guides, and then I would just go in a little if it's a range, go for the smaller range. Mm-hmm. That's what I did with Primrose Prairie. Just do the shortest of the range so that's pretty tight.
Yeah, it's all just about knowing what your plant's gonna do, because if this is gonna fountain, right? So keep that in mind. And when you're planting your other things around it, you want to put stuff that can shoot up through the fountain, creep under the fountain in the case of wild petunia.
Purple poppy melon.
There is that we tried to just have prairie drop seed, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Monocultures don't work.
They don't work. except for river oats, which works too good. But so there's also Sorghastrum nutans, prairie ochre, prairie fire, whatever,
Prairie-
I don't know what
yes.
we're calling it, but and this other drop seed called tall drop seed. Anyway, whatever. So all of that stuff moved in on its own. That's why it looks so packed and full, because we've let that evolve like that. So yeah, it wasn't planted like this.
I would be cautious pairing some of those other grasses with prairie dropseed though.
No, don't. Yeah,
Don't-
I'm saying don't do that.
Okay.
Don't put any grass, or don't put any tall drop seed. Don't ever plant sorghastrum, but I wouldn't normally. It's just, it's not the right grass for a at home name. It's just, it spreads way too much. Yeah. So we do end up
Great question.
fighting
Yeah.
a little bit. Yeah, great question.
Hope that non-answer
Oh,
answered
this
your
is
question.
really nice.
Look
A
at
really good
that.
one.
Yeah, so you can see the sprays of the seed heads. Maybe I'm gonna sit still so you can see it.
It's a very fine grass. I
It
really
is.
like that.
It reminds me of a thick head of hair, nice lush mane, and it actually takes to maintenance very well. So a little maintenance technique on these. Oh, and you're gonna see these are even younger. We planted
These are
these
probably
last
2,
year.
1.
We
These are
planted these
2.
last year, yeah.
From
and
Quartz.
So notice how these here, some of the smaller ones, compared to this one that looks so full. So we experimented with maintenance techniques. So what time of year was that? Was that March? Pretty early March,
Yeah.
a little earlier than we would typically recommend cleanup of, of your main natural habitats. But in the case of this formal rock garden, our gardening goals are different. And again, you'll hear us talking about gardening goals. It really is the best way to inform the plants that you're going to install in your space, because depending on what you want to achieve, different plants will offer those things to
Yeah.
you. So,
And how much maintenance you want to.
right. Yeah. So we ended up cutting these back pretty severely in mid-March. And the ones that we did that to look so good, nice and full.
Aren't those the one? I can't remember.
Yeah, that might be those down here, actually, the ones that are nice and blooming. And then we left these and trimmed them back a little bit later by hand using pruners. And do you want to demonstrate how you would do it? Like just grab maybe that one there.
Yeah. So well, we leave them up all winter because for food and shelter. But by that time of the year, they got snow packed and they were all falling down and stuff. So we would take them and cut them just like really tight to the base if you want to have that really clean look.
Mhm.
Don't leave. In this case, we left some
Maybe a couple inches.
Yeah, and it just doesn't look as tighty, I guess.
Yeah. So again,
this is the only bed we're looking for tidiness in.
yeah, definitely. So we have prairie drop seed elsewhere around the grounds that we don't even cut back, I think, right? Like I'm thinking by Butterfly Garden.
Yeah, unfortunately we can't burn. Ideally we would be able to burn. And that's probably not the case for a lot of you, but if you can torch your grasses at the end of March.
If you
that's
have
awesome.
a mysterious neighbor arson that flicks the cigarette into the leaf pot. No, I'm just kidding. Be safe, y'all.
Be safe.
Okay, we are going to make it to the prairie. I'm so excited. While we walk over there, Chris, did you say there was another question for us?
Yes, of course, in summertime, we have a lot of questions about pests. Let's talk about one, Japanese beetles.
Yeah.
Ooh, let's cross
I
over
mean,
the creek.
This could be an entire webinar topic in and of itself.
Oh, keep it brief.
Personally, in my garden, I use those bags, the Japanese beetle traps, and it seems like it almost begins to be more of an invitation to a party.
Yep.
And
It
the
sure
population skyrockets, and then I'm emptying those traps 2 to 3 times a week. The chickens are absolutely thrilled in our community garden because that's just beautiful food for them. But what are your suggestions? What are your thoughts? And do they damage your native gardens there at the Discovery Center?
Oh, they sure do.
They sure do.
They like to eat everything. So you know what we do? We eat them.
Yeah.
No
that
joke.
Shows them. That shows them.
Actually, we do. If you were at Ladies Night Out on Tuesday, you may have seen some of the edible insects that we offer. And if you come back for our Halloween event, we will feed you Japanese beetles.
We will.
They're crunchy.
Yeah.
That doesn't help you, dear viewer, with
You're
your question
serious?
about.
Right. But yes, so I have a lot of thoughts about this. So the Japanese beetles are primarily going to go after a few different species. And so you're going to see them go after first your fruit trees and your fruit bearing plants. And in those cases, sometimes it's like, well, if we're losing a little bit of leaves, like what's the big deal? But if they start to strip all the leaves off, the plant has a hard time recovering. And so then you should probably take measures. And so what we do to catch them, to eat them, is we just have a little funnel on a jar and just they're really
grab
slow.
them.
You just knock them. You just see the leaf and you put the thing under and knock them in there. And then we freeze them for about 10 minutes. Then we wash them, we boil them, and we bake them and we eat them. But yes, use them for fish food, for
Chicken food, human food.
That's right.
They're good with a little sea salt and garlic
Yeah.
roasted. Yeah.
Or marinated in like a soy sesame thing. That would be really good.
Oh no, we're losing viewers. Just kidding. But there is something to be said about the those bags and how they have a pheromone in them typically, and they just attract them. So we already have enough Japanese beetles. You probably don't want to be drawing them into your property, but they are benign. So if you can handle grabbing them and putting them in a jar.
Oh, you mean they're benign, like they don't bite?
Yeah, they're not going to really. I don't think they're going to bite you.
No, they don't bite. No, that's for sure. But when you are looking for them, make sure if you have dog bane, don't mix them up with the dog bane beetle, because they do look similar to that beetle, but they won't be on dog bane. Japanese beetles.
Ooh. Also something really cool. The tachnid fly parasitizes Japanese beetles. What that means is this fly will lay its eggs on the back of the beetle. So when you're looking at your beetles, if you observe they have little white speckles on their back, do not get rid of them, because that is a beneficial insect doing its job. They're doing their job. They're going to go ahead and eat those Japanese beetles up and help balance out the ecosystem. So that is another great thing you can do when dealing with pests in your gardens, is to attract native predatory and beneficial insects. Please do not go buy Chinese mantis from the garden store. Please don't do it. Just plant native plants that will naturally draw in our lovely native friend, the Carolina mantis. So and the birds too. So I hope that's helpful for you as you deal with your Japanese beetles. We have noticed it hasn't been as bad this year, at least over here.
So it feels like at this point every other year is bad, and it's just like cicadas, where there's a brood that's overwintering in the ground, and so like it depends on how they did the year before to know how many you're gonna have the next year. And so this year has been we tried to find them for the event yesterday and we had no luck. I've only seen a few out here so far, so hopefully they won't be a big deal this year. But like I said, most of your plants can recover as long as they're not fully defoliated.
Real quick, gal, you see our friend behind you, ironweed. Will you stand one of those up so the viewers can see how tall these robust friends can get? So Al, I think you are about what, 5'8", 9, 5'9", my apologies, 5'9". I'm not trying to insult you. So we talk about the Chelsea chop. We talk about gardening goals. For a lot of folks who want to have native plants in your backyard, maybe the height of ironweed. This is we think this is Missouri ironweed, Vernonia mazurka, and there, as you can see, it gets very tall and prolific. Now, if you were to see these plants in their natural habitats out in the prairie, they don't get nearly as tall, but due to the amount of rainfall and type of clay soils, we're too nice. We spoil them rotten, so they get really tall. So Alix taught me this method that she calls the Chelsea chop, and it is it mimics herbivory. And what we do is certain plant species, especially those in the Asteraceae family, can be cut back to about, I don't know, half their height at different times of year. And it will encourage them to stop growing tall, but instead put all their energy towards better bloom production. And so you'll have a nice short, more beautiful plant, or at least more blooms anyway, if you find that more beautiful.
Yeah, if you need it more compact, think about that earlier in the season and cut it back. Can we show the Sylphium or the willow leaf like that?
Yeah, we're gonna show willow leaf just in terms of and I apologize, I don't have that on our list, but I will add that to it. But you can see how nice and short this one is here, right?
You want me to run?
Yeah, run over there. Run, run, run. No, you don't have to run. Okay. That's it. That is also willow leaf sunflower. So when did we cut these back? Hold on, stand up. No, sorry. When did we cut the other one back?
Oh, maybe about a month ago, I think. So it all depends on when the plant's going to bloom. You never want to cut it when it already has buds on it. Okay. So you got to get it before then, because that's just too stressful for the plant. And this method is too stressful for a lot of species of plants. So make sure that you're not doing it on one that doesn't normally get eaten. If a plant would normally get eaten by a deer, you can usually do the Chelsea chop. So if you think about milkweed, you can't do it with milkweed because it's got the toxins in it. So no, you can't do it with milkweed, but I'm saying you shouldn't, because it's not used to being eaten.
Right.
So,
it's too stressful for the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would not be a good candidate for milkweed. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
I like that, paying attention to what would be normally eaten.
Yeah.
And following
that's how
suit.
you can sort of know what you could try the Chelsea chop
Yeah.
on. Yeah. And you want to show the top on that one again?
I do.
Okay. So so you see that one was like, I don't know, how tall is that? 7 feet tall?
That might be 10 feet over there. I don't know. I'm
And
sure
so we
it felt
cut these
very tall
back.
to me.
Right here, you can see the cut I made there.
Nice. Hold it right
And
there.
then,
Yeah, look at that. So instead of one sprout, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
that's right.
7
And
sprouts,
the
and these will
tall ones,
flower
They
too.
get multiple sprouts too, but they're kind of, what happens is that those are too happy. They get too tall. Once those bloom, they're going to all fall over. And so we're going to have to, cut them and put them in vase, whatever, if we have to. But so this is a much more manageable height for a home garden, I think.
Right. I love that. So I will say a little personal anecdote. I think it's always good to experiment with pushing the boundaries on your native plant garden, especially, again, going back to your gardening goals. If you need to, I just shut my umbrella. Help me. Thank you. That was funny. I just shut the umbrella right on my head, y'all. So your gardening goals, if you have a really tall plant, but you want to keep it in that spot and you think it'll respond well to the Chelsea chop, that's definitely something to try. But I would say before you go all in, do some testing, right? Any good artist would know, any good ceramic artist would know you should do some testing before you go ahead and, oh, I broke the umbrella, y'all. That's funny. Okay, let's go stand in the shade here for a second. Okay. Any good ceramic artist would know the value of testing your like glazes, for example, before firing all your pots with it. Same thing applies with experimentation in the garden. Try some different things on some of the plants, see how they respond.
And don't do it in the first couple of years, the plants. It would give them a little bit of time, unless they're really robust, like the stiff foliage.
So yeah, and this is the anecdote I want to tell you all about. So we're here. No, you're good. We're here at Primrose Prairie on the back side. We're looking at some of the blazing star here, which is looking great. So this plant right here.
Oh, that's a short.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because I cut these back. So last year, this is rigid goldenrod, Solidago rigida, or maybe it has a new name. I don't know. And again, Chris, apologies, that's not on our list, but I have to show you all this because I did the Chelsea chop on this plant last year and almost killed the whole thing. Now, goldenrods are in the Asteraceae family, and so typically we see this works really well with things like Canada goldenrod, for example, is really well adapted to this. Yeah. So I went ahead and cut these back last year. It was probably about this time of year. So keep it in mind that goldenrods bloom in the fall. So I figured, okay, mid-July, that's probably not too late. Well, last year we didn't have nearly as much rainfall as we've had in the past couple weeks. They totally did not respond well and almost entirely died. But the reason I cut them back in this garden is because they were just way too tall in their first year. They were like towering, 7 feet tall. And that's just for this particular garden, which is pretty petite. It really can't handle it. But
wait, can I talk about this? So the freshman flop, the sophomore flop?
Sure.
because when you first plant a native plant, and the second year typically they're going to grow a little bit bigger than they will average out in the end, because they've got a lot of extra nutrients. It's a new plant, they're putting out a lot of energy, so you got to really wait till year 3 usually to see the full size of a lot of people, and sometimes longer for other plants.
But. Well, I'm happy to report back though, this year I tried cutting the goldenrod back, but I did it a little earlier, and we watered it afterwards, which I suspected because it wasn't watered last year after I probably put it into too much shock. So it's looking good.
But that's a good point. If you're going to try this, just make sure that you don't do it like in the heat of a drought. And if you do, water that plant pretty regularly, so it doesn't get too
baby it so it can handle the new adjustments here. So yeah, I think that's interesting. So, Helen is asking, do you deadhead the cone flowers to encourage new blooms? We've seen it done. I've seen last year, we accidentally cut a purple cone flower and it bloomed in like November. It was really odd. I want to spread the seeds here in the garden. This is a plant I will keep the seed. You can see I have the seed heads up from coneflower species here. It's providing really great food for the birds. So for me, the benefit of keeping the seed heads on to support the wildlife is more valuable than having a second bloom for this particular plant. And again, you do not want to deadhead the liatris. It won't give you a second bloom. It'll try to, but
wait, you mean a second bloom?
Someone asked about a second bloom. Yeah, it won't be able to come back. It takes so much energy to create. I was reading it or maybe you told me this, Al. It takes so much energy for it to create these flower stalks. And so if they get damaged, it's a pretty big hit on these plants.
Yeah, that's why they're so tough though,
I think so too. Okay, I'm going to see what other questions we have here. And I know we're going to be wrapping up here soon.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, I want to go back to a couple that have been on hold here for a while. As you're in the shade, I want to ask a couple questions about shade. Melissa wants to know about a red buckeye and she doesn't mention the scale of it, if it was small or full size. It was planted in partial shade near a black walnut. It's in the same context as a redbud and a dogwood that are thriving. Do you know about red buckeye and susceptibility to juglans, walnut inhibition, or walnut poisoning, if we want to use a word like that strong?
I'm trying to think. We don't have any near enough to walnuts.
So we have
I will say buckeyes grow really I wonder how old it is, because buckeyes really are small for the first few years, and so they they're not a very significant tree when they're at their mature height either. And
not significant.
I'm sorry.
Their presence they're small but mighty.
Yes, they're very important. An understory tree it needs to have a lot of space and some short height. We need short little.
Looking at me.
Melissa's buckeyes
that's a
in the
great
ground
question.
2 months.
What's that?
Say that again, please.
Melissa's buckeyes in the ground for 2 months, so you're encouraging some patience on that.
Great.
And also, am I familiar with red buckeye enough to understand that it really does tolerate a lot of moisture? It tends to grow on creek banks and may need more water than is being applied to a upland landscape.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Chris. Yeah, if it's surrounded by a bunch of turf grass, it may just be the water is just kind of running off and not really being able to stay in the soil and keep things moist.
You should always water new trees especially if you put it in 2 months ago. If you're planting trees in the spring, you really have to water them in the summer. So like with our native plants, we only water those for sometimes a couple weeks, but with the trees, we water our baby trees really regularly during the summer.
They also, I see that Lisa's mentioning that her red buckeye gets quite a bit of sun and usually gets brown leaves by this time of year, so it is it's not technically a spring ephemeral, but in my eyes, it is more of a spring ephemeral like tree species that does tend to fade back this time of year.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep us posted, Melissa, on how your red buckeye is doing. That is one of my favorite. Actually, that was my favorite tree this year, and it might still be. But it always gets me every spring. It's so magical.
It is. And I was just talking to someone at Ladies Night the other night, like how rare the color red is in native plant world. And we were talking about through the seasons, there's usually a red flower for the hummingbirds and the buckeye. It really kind of overlaps at the very beginning of the hummingbird season. And so they love it. That'll bring in your hummingbirds for sure to those red flowers. They love it.
Ooh, and Royal Catchfly is really pretty right now.
Yes,
Lisa is.
And Cardinal Flower are the reds right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a shock.
Let's we're at quarter till now. As we speak about shade, and we're standing in shade, getting a little reprieve from the sun there. Audrey is asking about native ferns. Aside from our traditional plant sourcing resources available at deeproots.org, do you have any recommendations about native ferns finding good sources, or alternately, have you ever taken native fern spores and spread them like little fern fairies out in the forest?
Oh my gosh, these questions are hard today. We really struggle with ferns.
You said ask me anything.
I
know. Well, to be
it's a hard
honest,
one.
yeah.
Yes, we're being very honest. We really struggle with ferns, and we've tried to plant them under our big oaks in the upland part of the forest, and we just can't seem to keep them alive. We've got the wrong habitat.
Yeah.
And it's I think that some of them are pickier than others. I know Christmas fern is one that's a little more tolerant, and ostrich are also one, and cinnamon fern is pretty regularly available too. And we get ours from Soil Service we've gotten from before, and then also in Kansas City, Crit Site, I think we've gotten ferns. We got ferns from Crit Site.
I think we've looked at ferns at Crit Site, but it's really difficult. If anyone has any suggestions and want to leave them in the comments, we are open, because
we are we are very like, if you survive, you get to live here too. Like, we don't do any amendments to our soils, but if you wanted ferns, that would definitely be the way to go, is like figure out what your soil is and see if you need to fix it in whatever way to
just please avoid peat moss if y'all can. If you don't know how damaging using peat moss is to the environment, definitely do a quick Google search on that. But there are other really great options for materials you can amend your soil with that won't degrade habitat. Oh, look, a bird just landed on the coneflower.
Oh, little goldfinch.
So cute.
I say this all the time, but all you have to do is plant one coneflower in your yard, and then you get
instant goldfinch. I'm gonna probably scare it. Oh, sorry, friend. Okay.
Right.
Great question about ferns.
Good questions.
Yeah,
let's keep on a couple of these here. Can you talk about the native roses? And are there any native roses there? I don't recall any. Is there one that is not wild or thorny?
Wow, y'all are hard hitters today.
Questions. Do you want me to?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say
So-
before you do, I don't know. Cydney here. I know there's one. I know of one, and I don't think I could even tell you the name. So hopefully Al can pull it out of her hat.
We have a lot of rose species actually in the Midwest, and one of the most common one you're going to see is Arkansas rose. That is the one that I run into the most, and that would be the one I would say probably is your best bet to get from the nursery, because I know I've seen it at our plant sales before. But it is thorny and it's beautiful, and it really is tricky to try and fit a rose into a landscape. That's really the hard part. You have to have the right situation. So they're not a traditional, knockout rose bush shape. They're kind of a creepy, short, not creepy, but they kind of creep in.
They're
our
creepers.
shorts. And so they don't really hold, stand up. They rely on other plants to sort of lean on. So
Well, could you grow it onto like a short trellis?
You could, but
Or
that's not
structure?
a natural,
No.
like a regular rose bush.
I
It's
see.
kind of, in the same way with cream wild indigo. Lovely plant, so awkward to try and fit into a planting because if it's like floppy, I don't know, it's just a tricky one.
That's interesting.
But yeah, roses are so important. We have so many pollinators that feed exclusively on the rose family, and some that are very specific to just roses, not just the rosaceae. The Japanese beetles will eat all of your roses too. They love
native
roses.
or otherwise, right?
Yes, native or otherwise.
I love that. I really appreciate that question. And it tells me I need to learn more about roses. Which,
So-
there's always something new to learn in nature,
Yes.
right?
So at the Discovery Center, we try not to plant too many plants that are like harmful, because we have a lot of kids here that are running around. And so we try to keep our thorny
Except
plants
this
to a
one.
minimum, except right here. And so there's some things we just don't have, like roses would be one we just probably wouldn't have. I'm getting away with one Hercules club, which is an insane thorny thing, but typically we try to keep our thornier things out of the landscape here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm coming up with a link for somebody's asking about some stratification of native seeds.
Cool. Well, while you're doing
It's
that,
got
I
some
did
great
see,
suggestions in the chat there as well. Thank you, Lisa Richter, for
I was just going to say
backing
that.
us up on
Lisa.
this amazing input of questions here today. Let me fire through a couple more while we still have just a bit of time. Val wants to know about stippling on aster leaves suggests that spider mites are running amok, and dogwoods in this same planting did not bloom this year. Is that a question of water, or is that a question of some other challenges?
If the dogwood didn't bloom, how old is it? It may not bloom for the first couple of years.
May not bloom for the first 5 years even.
Dogwood? Wait,
Yeah.
what?
At least-
Sorry.
it's
I
at
always say
least 10 years old.
dogwood, the
Dogwood.
tree.
The tree.
Oh yeah, that won't bloom for a really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's at least 10 years old. And
10
it did
years
not bloom
old.
this year,
And it
which
didn't bloom this year?
implies, I think, that it may have bloomed in the past.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Ours didn't bloom this year. That one didn't bloom this year. The big one up in the forest didn't bloom this year
Really?
either.
Do you think it was a moisture issue? Because I feel like we didn't have good rain this spring.
I don't think so. I think that trees take turns. We've talked about this before, where sometimes a tree will take a year off from producing a lot of fruit.
Like masting.
Yeah, masting and stuff. So it could be that. I wouldn't worry too much about it if it's already 10 years old. If it's not showing any signs of stress otherwise, I wouldn't worry about
Maybe
it.
give it, we got plenty of rain recently, but in the future, if we're short on rain, it wouldn't hurt to get a tree bag. You may be familiar with those watering tree bags for our smaller trees. That way you can water consistently when you need to.
Yeah. And so you said it about aster leaves.
They said, I think that there were indications of possible mite bites or mite spots.
Yeah. So that's like one of the, I want to do a whole episode on this, on clues about bugs. So like when you see something on a leaf, what made that, what's living in there, and leaf miners are, and I should say spiders, maybe spider mites,
leaf miners,
yeah, aphids, all these little tiny bugs that make their that lay their eggs and do their whole life cycle in different parts of the plants. That means it's working. You've had some bugs that like your plant. It's not going to stress the plant out, maybe look a little bit unsightly for a little while, but
if the plant's established, it shouldn't anyway.
oh yeah, I mean,
Right.
spider mites, I don't think would. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, Val, that makes you feel like you're not alone here. We got a lot of folks chiming in chat on that one.
We're feeding the spider mites too.
Yes. Let's see here. We've got a question about Baptisia and Monarda. Question, can you chop on Monarda? Some people in chat are saying that yes, you can cut Monarda back. Karen asks if that's, how do you feel about that, Alix and Cydney? Karen has heard both suggestions made that you should.
I feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about it, Chris.
Excellent.
So Monarda fistulosa, that which is the taller of the bee balms or wild bergamots, those are some common names for it. It is one of our mint plants in the mint family, and it responds really well to Chelsea chop, but you would do it at an earlier time. So at this point now, it's they've bloomed, they've gone to seed. So it wouldn't be a good time to cut them back unless, for potential aesthetic reasons, but leave those seed heads up if you can, because goldfinches love those too. But I would say probably mid-May. Is that when?
Yeah,
Early May,
yeah,
perhaps?
maybe June too. June's kind of like for the late summer blooming stuff. The beginning of June would be the very end, like before you just want to get to it before buds are on. So
Yeah.
before they're even close to forming. So yeah.
I was just gonna say something. I think Chris mentioned something about baptisia, and I just wanted to talk about what we noticed from our friend Kathy Bayan. I don't know if Kathy's watching right now, but she pointed out at the Project Living Proof House how they cut back Baptisia australis, the blue false indigo, because it was flopping over a boardwalk, and it looks so good. They cut that back maybe like a month ago or so, and it probabably won't rebloom. You think it's gonna bloom
Have I
again?
not told you I've done this before?
Oh
I
my
can show you that one
God.
over there. It's doing it right now, and I just cut it back 2 weeks ago. It's already regrowing.
Yeah.
And so if you cut your baptisia, it's always a trade, right? Do you want the seeds? Do you want the form of the shrub? But in some cases, it gets too big and it's covering up the sign. So we cut it all the way back, and we've gotten it to rebloom in the fall too.
Very cool. I don't
You
remember
heard it
that.
here, Peggy. You heard it here first, Peggy. All
Now,
right.
I want remember, don't do that. You can do it right now, but just make sure if it's really hot for the next few days, we don't get rain. Make sure to water it a couple of times.
Yeah, look at your extended forecast, y'all. I like the Weather Channel app. It's free, and it's been pretty reliable for
kind
us.
of, except this week.
Well, nobody's
Man.
was reliable this week because I don't know, because weather be doing its thing.
Right. All right. In the resources, Val will include a link to the metal surrounds for Primrose Prairie. We've talked about those in a previous. And Sunny Bannock
yeah.
coming to a nature advisor's visit near you. Sunny wants to know what suggestion for a privacy hedge native plant. Even if it's just herbaceous, I love this question, and I bet we've all got a different favorite here. But something that may be herbaceous, gets to height in the summertime, and maybe even dies back. Thoughts?
Oh,
questions?
man.
All right. Okay. Hey, Sunny. Hey.
Hi, Sunny.
Okay. I just had one. I'm curious what you're thinking, because there's so many things you could do for this, like an herbaceous perennial. How about cup plant?
Yes.
How about I have seen fabulous cup plant hedges. I am gonna go over here. I gotta show y'all. They will be full of water. So while I'm walking over here, think about what you would suggest. But here is our tall cup plant friend mixed in. There's a little bit of beard, crown beard in here too, but this is such a cool plant because, as the name indicates, that has little cups here that hold water. And so wildlife drinks from it. And it also gets to a great height. If you all remember the art installation Al and I made at Kill Creek Park out in Johnson County, we used a lot of cup plant stalks because they're also known as carpenter square plant. They have an awesome structural plant. So that, I think, Sunny, would be a really fun hedge. But again, it does require full sun. Look at this plant here in the landscape. So as long as you have full sun, you could do that.
Yeah. And in the same way, more sunflowers, compass plant would be a good one. Willow leaf sunflower would be amazing. What else? What else good? What about well, maybe that's not tall enough. Rosalweed.
Yeah.
And,
how about this? Okay, well, what about coral honeysuckle? Build a trellis.
Yeah.
If you have a fence, Sunny, you could add some extenders to it if you wanted. And this will grow so happy. The leaves stay semi-evergreen, and it blooms. And in fact, ours didn't go dormant last year, which is kind of cool, but kind of scary. Thanks, climate change. But it's just a really cool plant. It attracts. There's a bloom up.
Yeah, and unlike some of our vines, like passion vine, it is a woody perennial, so it stays, and you cut it. You can just trim it back here. I think there's one on the other side. You can trim it back wherever you like.
This might be a good one to end on. I know we're running out of time.
Oh my god.
Oh, you guys. Passion flower.
Look how beautifully that bee's back just fits right underneath that. If they're getting all that pollen.
The trellis plant we spoke of is coral honeysuckle, Monstera sempervirens. Sorry, that bee flew right into my ear. It tickled. Look at this passion flower. So this is such an interesting plant. So you can see the pollen is just underneath these top sections here. So as the bee circles around, the pollen is being deposited onto its back. So that's passion flower. Hi, friend. And here's the
We
coral
don't recommend
honeysuckle.
planting, don't plant passion
Oh
flower unless
my
you have the right
gosh.
situation. Do your research.
Do your research. I love passion flower, but you'll never get rid of it
No,
once
and
you
it will-
plant
it will
it.
plant
And it will choke
everything.
everything else out, I promise. But
Here's
it is
the-
beautiful.
It is so beautiful. Here's the coral honeysuckle flowers. So those, another red one for the hummingbirds. They love it. This thing is covered in hummingbirds when it's blooming.
Okay, we're gonna go sit in here in the teepee. Okay, y'all. I'm afraid my phone's gonna overheat and our umbrella broke. So I'm gonna sit here and just hold this coral honeysuckle for y'all to look at as we finish up the native plants at noon hour. Let's see, Chris, do we have any other questions from our viewers before we go and say goodbye?
We do have a handful that are hanging on here, but out of respect for everybody's time today, let's save the Q&A for our resource and links page that we'll send via email to all of our attendees. We just want to remind you that also in that resource links and follow-up email, you will see the upcoming work days, the native landscape chat, and the upcoming event. Please do get excited about going to Kill Creek Prairie this Saturday to have a follow-up mid-season visit with Cydney and Alix. Yes?
No,
Just me,
With
but it'll be
Cydney.
fun anyway. Alix in spirit.
I have friends from out of town.
Not to worry, but folks, we need some friends to go and join out there to follow up with our Art in the Park residency project out there that Sid and Alix have done such an incredible job with. And check out all of our events and webinars on our website at deeproots.org/events. And while you're there, of course, if you would consider making a donation to support programs like this and all of the great advice and all the great input and all of the great Ask Me Anythings that come through Deep Roots and our Deep Roots family here. But thank you for joining us, and we will see you in a few weeks for Lunch and Learn, where we are proud to roll out Deep Roots KC's Sweet 16 most likely to succeed native plants, the long-awaited, and with the return of our dear friend Sarah Beyer.
Yeah. I'm so
so
excited. Sarah and I are gonna have a blast.
It's going to be great. I will not be with us. I'll be on the river that day. And do join us August 3rd. Same bat channel, same bat time.
All right. May popping out.
May popping.